It is overtime here again at Old Favorite Friday, and I am joined, like I often am, by head brewer Ralph Renault here at Barrel of Months Brewing. And I am giddy this week, Ralph. I'm giddy because I went to the store to pick up the beer for Old Favorite Friday this week. I picked out a beer that has been recommended several times. We'll get to that in the future. Maybe next week we'll get to that. But as I'm perusing the shelves, trying to look for what the beer I'm trying to find, I see Anchor Porter. Now, we have done the Anchor, the steam beer, here on Old Favorite Friday, and I have not seen Anchor Porter in our South Florida market for years. Maybe it has been here. I know they also did the rebrand and the repackaging, so there might be some of the, maybe it was here, I just didn't realize it. But anyway, point of the matter is I haven't had an Anchor Porter in a long time. I would say too long, because I really freaking love this beer, and I really, really love porters. You are a stout. I would say when we're talking beers, you're always talking IPAs and you're talking stouts.
Yep,
right?
those are my two favorite.
Those are your go-tos, right?
Yep.
So tell me, as the head brewer, as a guru of all things beer, what's the difference between a porter and a stout?
So I would say the biggest thing now, which is actually, I'm glad you asked me that question, it was something I was going to touch on, would be where a stout has become roastier, generally tends to be higher gravity, depending on the style, maybe a touch more body. But what I think is so interesting is porters that started like in London at the time, and where it got its name from like the workers there. It used to, the term stout even referred to the strength of a porter. So at one point it was literally just porter. So I think
a stout porter.
Yeah, it was a stout porter, because
exactly.
you could even have other styles. They might even say like a stout IPA versus like now we have Imperial. So I think it's so interesting how now there's definitely a difference where, yeah, even a porter now, I'd say it's lighter, but not much. You know, if you've never had one, you might not notice it, but I always get a little bit of sweeter. The roast isn't quite as like at the forefront in terms of like, it's never going to be that like coffee, like sometimes too much for people. To me, it's a little more subtle, but you still know it's in the stout family. But yeah, it's so interesting to see something that was one style that was just
branched,
yeah.
Right? At some point, they kind of branched off to do different things, and you definitely see porters. I see a lighter mouthfeel in many of them. Also, you know, in some classic porters, I get a little more bitterness sometimes, depending on the style. This beer, to me, though, and kind of shifting the gear from the style to the beer itself. Man, do I love this beer. I am picking up a little bit of coffee. It's not overabundance. I'm getting tons of chocolate on the nose. I mean, and not that like sweet chocolate like we're talking about pastry stouts. I'm talking about baker's chocolate, dark chocolate, aroma, flavor, pow, punching me in the face.
Yeah, what I'm getting, what I really liked, and it was actually the first thing that hit me, especially because this is not even remotely in the pastry realm, but I get almost a creme brulee type thing. It's, to me, I think it's whatever their yeast they're using with like the malts to make this almost like dark, where it is robust but sweet leaning beer. It really gives me almost like if you made like some kind of fruited pie, so to speak, but not a pie's not a good word, but almost like a custard, fruited custard. So I'm getting that with, like you said, you're getting the coffee and all that, but it's leaning almost like a chocolate fruited custard that I really like in this beer.
Yeah, and it's just so well balanced. It's so drinkable, and I know we talk about that a lot, and we always talk about keeping beers dry and drinkable because that's what we want to go back for the next sip. There's a level of refreshment that I look for in pretty much every beer, right? Even when you're going into quads and things like that, I still want them to be refreshing in some way. This has just the right amount of bitterness in the back end, right? To keep it interesting. It's clean. It's got tons of flavor, but the body style is not too heavy. This is one of those beers, again, I look at it and I go, I don't see a flaw. It ticks every box. This is what I want in a porter. It hits every single one of those. It remains complex. And this is from a brewery. This beer was first brewed in 1972. 1972. And this brewery's been around for a very long time. They're one of the OGs when it comes to American craft beer. And the fact that, you know, the fact that it's been out of the South Florida market for so long just goes to show you that it has to be underappreciated, which you can't even find it.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's exactly what you just said, but it's almost like, I feel like in a way understated, but this is so true to style. If someone was like, I want to get into porters, this would be a great starting place because, like you said, number one, there's nothing off because every beer, no matter how well you do, nothing is always perfect, but I can't get any discernible off flavor with this. And it is so true where it's like, yes, you get the roast, you get the sweetness. If there was like a, ticking every box, this pretty much nails it. And unfortunately, that is probably why we may not see it as often down here, because especially in the Florida market, it's very much, what have you done for me lately, and how can we go bigger even when it's totally unnecessary? And
Well, that's the thing. If you're making a porter, you don't really want one thing to stand
Yeah.
out and be the one flavor that you taste. And we do see that a lot. We see that, and we see it represented a lot in the things that we're talking about, pastry stouts, and we're talking about big hazy IPAs that they just taste like tropical fruit. Subtlety is underrepresented in craft beer these days, especially in the kind of the uber craft beer geek crowd, where you're looking for the new hot thing, you're looking for the thing that you can talk about and create buzz. Whereas a beer like this goes under the radar because it just does everything really, really well. And we've seen this so many times with Anchor in Sierra Nevada, and we've seen it with New Belgium, we've seen it with Omegang, we've seen it with Boulevard. Just these incredible breweries that do everything really, really well, and they tick those boxes. And that's one of the reasons why we do this video series, is because those beers need to be appreciated more. And I really, if you are a brewer and you want to make a porter, go pick this beer up, try it. This is the benchmark, right? This is one of the benchmark beers, and that's what you're gonna try to create. Now you're gonna do your own thing, and you're gonna go off and you're gonna put your own spin on it. But it really, really is important to go to the OGs, the classic versions of the style. And even if you're not a brewer, if you're just a craft beer aficionado, or you want to be a craft beer aficionado, you got to know where this stuff comes from. And you can't have some big, heavily adjuncted porter until you've had something like this first.
Yeah, and one thing to shift a little bit of gears, but I'm going to put on my brewer's hat. One thing I could have sworn I remember, and people can look back at the old video when we did Steam, but I don't know the dating on this, but one thing Anchor seems to be fantastic on is keeping out negative oxygen, because like you said, this isn't a beer that everyone's going to just immediately grab. So I imagine it's sat for a second. It might have only been 2 months, but it's probably been there for a minute. And there's nothing of you think of a beer sitting on a shelf. So Anchor,
No
kudos to
oxidized
them. Yeah, no,
flavor. Well, I did read one thing. On the website, I saw that it said it was naturally carbonated, which means that they may be doing a bottle conditioning or a partial bottle conditioning. They do have a heavier glass, right? It's not an American long neck. I'd never heard that before. It is on their site. It didn't say bottle conditioned. It said naturally carbonated. And I didn't know if those are if those were words that were always synonymous with each other, or there might be some other kind of way to put that. So, I mean, maybe they're capturing CO2 naturally, and then so I'm not 100% sure on that. But I did want to mention it because when you're talking about scavenging oxygen, one of the best things you can do for that is do bottle conditioning. And when you're looking for, the reduction of oxygen in a beer, and for that nice tight carbonation, which you get on this beer. So listen, Anchor Porter, I was thrilled to find it. If you can find it in your local market, please pick it up. Support one of the OGs in craft beer. Pick up a great example of the style. Please poke around our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, see longer conversations we have about some of these great beers, often with head brewer Ralph Renaud, and sometimes with guests. And then we'll see you next time for Old Favorite Friday. Cheers.
Cheers.